This is a way of building the continuity in time that we talked about earlier. And if you don't have pictures going on into the future, that means that continuity is not there. If you have gaps in your record, then it means that continuity is less than it could be. By increasing that continuity, you can make that even solider and more a sense of who you are rather than just something you do from time to time. And it's not just linguistics. It's a difference in experience between someone who says, I am a kind person, and another person might say, well, I'm kind from time to time. That's very different. Those are two very different expressions, and they refer to two very different experiences inside. Now I want to go on to some other stuff that we can check for in there. And all of these are just things to make your self-concept even stronger than it is already. So again, I'd like to have somebody to play with a little bit. And I'm going to switch chairs because I want to demonstrate that change is possible. But again, I'd like to have somebody who has not been in the seminar before and who would like to explore some other things. You almost volunteered earlier. You want to give it a try? Oh, okay, great. Come on up, Anwar. We need to electrify you. I love to play with words that are maybe just a little out of context. It just gets your mind going. Okay, so tell me about your database a little bit now. You have these things off to your left, is that right?
I have them on my left, but when I talked with you, it became more colorful and like scattered in front of me.
Ah, now it's spread out more. Okay. So is it in a kind of an arc like that?
Yes.
Like you're gesturing? Great. Is there anything particular about the things at this end of the arc and this end of the arc?
With different people. Like family here and other people there.
Okay. So this would express your relationship with people who are closer to you, is that right?
Yes.
That the people who are in fact closer are closer.
Near, yes, near.
And then these are people maybe more business associates or friends and so on. Great. See, there's so many ways we can code these things. It's just wonderful.
And I just got that after talking with you.
Okay.
Before they were black and white and they are just there and I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, very often you get ideas from just the discussion and hearing other people talk about how they do things. You go, oh, well, let's do it this way. And that's wonderful. Because that's what all of this is about, is how you can reorganize your brain to make it work a little better. That's all.
But I think those four images are still there, the black and white.
Okay.
And the arc is colored.
Okay. Okay, great. Now I want to ask you some other questions. You're familiar with the perceptual positions, right? Self, other, and observer. Now, if you examine the images that you have there, do you have all of those different ones represented? Or are they all... Usually people have self represented.
Self here, others, and self.
Okay. And so other position is actually taking the viewpoint of another person, right? Are there any observer then?
I am the observer in the middle one.
But are you observing from your self position?
From myself.
Okay. And what I'm talking about observer is where you're off to the side, seeing yourself and the other person.
No, only the other person.
Okay. Now, try adding some in. And you can do it just by using the images that you have. So that, let's say, take one of these where you're looking out of your own eyes, and then just imagine, walking off to the side like this, and what you would see if you're observing yourself as well as the other person. And add that image in, and do several of those.
With the middle one, or
anyone you want?
The family one?
Anyone you want.
Okay.
I'm just broadening the kind of representation that you have in there, because it gives you different information. As you all know,
I did with the family one.
Okay, great. Do it with several others, so that any one image, any one event, let's say, that you are remembering, is seen from all three perceptual positions, that you can see all three. Some people like to link the three in a little triad, so they can just rotate around in that little triad.
Mm-hmm.
This is another way of adding information into your database, making it stronger.
Yeah, it does. It became more strong.
Became more strong when you got that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Do a little more.
I'm trying to do with the middle one. It's
Something difficult about that? The middle one was, this is seeing out of your own eyes?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Step in.
Try observer on that. So that you see yourself interacting with this other person. Gives you wonderful information about how your behavior triggers other people's behavior.
Okay.
And that's wonderful because it gives you more choice. If I realize, oh, I shook my head just then, and that meant she thought I was...
This is what I find out.
Yeah?
Something that I shouldn't have done.
Okay. Well, that's good information. You see, this builds in feedback. And again, the richer the database is, the more opportunity there is for feedback. And sometimes it's a little chagrining, and you go, oh, gosh, I could have done that better. But that's learning. I got a wonderful quote recently. The road to wisdom is easy to express. And again, but less and less and less. You can't stop making mistakes, but you can make smaller ones. Anyway, you get the idea that if you enrich your database with additional perceptual positions, it makes it stronger usually, and occasionally it makes it weaker for a little while because you notice you goofed somehow, and then you need to redo that one, and, well, how do I want to do that different in the future? But it gives you more information and gives you more feedback. Okay. Another one. As you look at those images that you have, and you have a few more now than you had a little while ago, I want to make a distinction between specific detail. Detail is almost like a photograph. That if I just took a photograph here of Paul, I'd see the way he's, all the detail of his. And at the other extreme is something like a metaphor or an icon. An icon for courage might be a lion. An icon for tenacity might be a turtle. It just keeps going. It's real slow, but it gets there. And then there can be everything in between. And most of our images are actually somewhere in between. They're not quite photographs, but most of them are fairly detailed. And as you look at your images, are they all fairly detailed? Or any of them iconic? And I use that in the very general term as not quite real, that they're somehow not a videotape.
One of them,
okay.
The one here, is not detailed.
Okay, is it kind of fuzzy?
No, it's like a symbol.
A symbol?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as you think about that symbol and contrast it with a detailed image, how are they different in terms of their impact for you? How?
This has, the detailed one has meaning.
Okay.
The other one is just hello, shalom, has no meaning.
Oh, really? That's unusual. Interesting. Can you say any more about that? Because very often...
Maybe because one is far, one is near.
Okay. Try bringing the far one near. Just to try out. You can always move it back.
And it's what do you want to know again?
They have different characteristics.
Yes.
And there are advantages to both. It's not that one is bad and one is good. They're just different. And I wonder if you can tell me anything about your experience, because I really want all of you to learn from your own experience. I'm giving you words. I'm pointing at things. I'm trying to guide your experience. But ultimately, it's your experience that really, educates you. What is the difference? If you had just the icon for this quality, Try that out and then compare just having a detailed image. Just try them one at a time. Try the icon first and the detailed image.
The detailed I have feelings looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
The other, there is feeling, but it's not as intense.
Mm-hmm. Not as intense feeling.
Yes, and probably it is small. Maybe let me.
Is it smaller?
It is smaller.
Uh-huh. It's still a little farther too.
It's here, and the other one is there.
Yeah. Bring them in.
Okay.
And then make them the same size.
Mm-hmm.
Can you notice any difference?
In the quality of image or in me?
Well, I'm trying not to lead you too much. I may have to give up and suggest something.
Yeah, give up. I feel more to this when it is more near me, more.
Well,
more
it's closer. These are people who are closer to you too.
Yes.
So there's that maybe kind of mixing things up a little bit. Let me describe something and see if it fits with your experience and the rest of you too. That an icon is fairly vague. It doesn't. Well, let me start with the other side. A specific videotape experience of, let's say, kindness tells you exactly what to do that kind of kindness. You would sit in this position, you would nod your head, you would stroke the person's back, or whatever it is. There's very detailed information of what to do in a specific context. And that means it tends to be fairly, you can know exactly what to do, and yet it's relatively restricted in terms of context. If you have an icon like a tortoise or courage or being a lion or something like that, it's a very general metaphoric kind of thing that could apply to almost any context, but it would not tell you exactly what to do. So in terms of this quality, does that fit for you? That in terms of whatever quality this is that you have, that these over here are specific representations of exactly what you could do to express that quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the icon is more general, right?
More general, right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, do you understand how there are advantages to both? If you have an icon of being a lion, you can go into any situation. It won't tell you exactly what to do, but it will give you a state access, and it will give you a general direction to go that can be very useful, particularly if you have never been in that context before and you don't have any representation of what to do in that context. On the other hand, the specific detailed images, particularly if you have a large database of many, many varieties, many, many different examples, tells you exactly what to do. Oh, with this kind of person, I could be this way. And with this other kind of person, I would have to be this way. And it tells you much more detail how you could exhibit this quality. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. But in the image that has, I have a lion.
Okay.
But it's not of me, of somebody else.
Okay.
Which also I care. There is an experiences of caring with him. But he's still, this is more vivid to me than the other.
Well, it's much more specific, much more detailed.
Detailed, colorful.
Now, in terms of a summary for a database, an icon is wonderful, because an icon summarizes all the stuff that's in the database.
Yes, I think so.
So it's great as a summary. Sometimes it's not quite so good in the database itself, but a few is fine, because it does that spreading effect that we were just exploring in time. It's like this icon spreads across all these specific examples and gives you a sense of that continuity and solidity. Okay, we can discuss this more. Let me go on to a couple of others. When you have these images of this quality, are any of them other people? Are they all yourself or some of both?
All other.
They're all others. Okay? What if you put in some of yourself, being kind, or whatever the quality is?
Yeah, I could. Yes.
Okay? Put in a few more. Take a minute or two to put in a few more.
More of myself?
Yes. Being kind in different contexts. I'm using the word kind. I'm sorry.
No, I have a different quality.
Yeah, good. Good. Whatever your quality is. Expressing this quality in different contexts, different situations, different outcomes, whatever. Okay. Now, having done that, I want you to look at the other people that you have represented. And they may be very good representatives of this quality. But I want you to look carefully at those images and find out if there's anything in there that you don't want. Often, for instance, we use images of our parents or people who've been close around us for certain qualities, even though they may not be the best examples of that quality. Maybe your dad wasn't really that kind very often, but you use him because he was handy or that's all you had. And sometimes it can be very, very useful to go inside, notice who you represent, and think about, is there someone else that I could add in, and maybe sometimes delete some of the people that I've got in there to be a better representation of this quality.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you? Okay, try a little bit of that. In other words, many of the images that we have inside are essentially a bit random. And it can be very useful to go inside and find out, let me give you an example. When I was learning Gestalt therapy, I had an image of myself leading a Gestalt therapy group that evening. And as I saw myself with a cigarette in my fingers. Well, that came from Fritz Perls, who always had a cigarette when he was doing Gestalt therapy. I didn't want to take on that specific behavior. But because I had that image in there, I was starting to head in that direction, even though I really don't like cigarettes. So even if you keep the same person, it can be useful to pick a different event with that person, sometime when they were only having that quality and not adding in some other quality or something that would kind of mess it up a little bit. So just explore that for a minute or two. And of course, this is just an introduction to it. You can always do much more later.
Yeah.
Okay, does that make sense to you?
Yes. Yes.
And did you make some changes in who you had in there? And does that make you feel different about that quality?
To the quality, no, but it added something to me. I don't know what.
Some kind of richness or
richness, yes.
Detail? Yeah. See, these are all ways of improving how we think about ourselves and making it work for you. Notice it's her values. I'm not imposing my values. I'm saying, take a look, try this out in terms of what's important to you. Are there any changes you would make? Okay. Now, again, take a look at those images and think about the context that they represent. There are a number of major life contexts, work and play and school and home and outside the home and so on.
Right.
Do you have examples in all of those major life contexts?
Yes, different context.
Okay, sure. And is there any context that's underrepresented?
There are other contexts not represented.
Great. Okay, would you search in your memory for examples from other contexts that are not represented and add those in? See, this is a way of making it go across space. Let's imagine, while you're doing that, I'm going to talk with them, and you can listen in if you want. If someone only had a quality in business context, then that would mean that if they were out of that business context, they would not have much of a self-concept outside of that context. It would be like going to a completely foreign land. And very often people lose their sense of self when they go to a foreign land because everything is so different. And they don't have representations of themselves in this wholly different context. It's often very, very difficult for people. If you have internal representations of yourself in many, many different contexts, then you can maintain your sense of self throughout space, throughout different places and contexts. some people, for instance, well, I talked to a guy once who said the following. He was now about 50, and his body was starting to fall apart a little bit. He said, my whole life was volleyball. I used to play volleyball a bunch. And this guy had been, literally, his whole life was in the context of volleyball. All his friends played volleyball. All his activities involved volleyball. His club was a volleyball club. His work was volleyball. Everything was volleyball. And now his knees were beginning to go a little bit, and he couldn't serve as well as he used to, and so on. And he was having a very difficult time adjusting. What is often called a midlife crisis involves this kind of thing, where someone somehow is no longer in the context that offers them an identity. Mothers whose children grow up and go away from home often face this. Their whole life has been in the home, focused on children and raising them and so on. When that's over, it's like their life is over. And their identity is over. It's more than just their behaviors need to shift, but their whole identity needs to shift so they continue to have a sense of themselves even though the whole context is shifting. That makes sense?
My art is full of images.
Ah, wonderful. And does that feel better?
Yeah, it's like my past, my present, my future. It's all in front of me.
Okay, sort of embracing you almost.
Yeah, I guess.
Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's leading you a little bit, but that's the sense I got when
no,
I got this.
They are just in front of me, like I'm looking at them.
Mm-hmm. And does it give you a fuller sense of having that quality?
Rich life, rich.
Yeah. Great, wonderful.
Rich feelings.
Okay, and there's one other thing I'd like you to play with a little bit. Sometimes
there is no spaces.
It's all filled in, huh?
Okay.
Well,
more.
If you want to add in more, you can have another row.
Another row, yeah.
Okay, great. I don't want you to be limited here.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Now, there's one other thing I'd like you to check for. Sometimes when you see images, particularly of yourself, they may be distorted in some way. And sometimes they're distorted in the positive direction, sometimes in the negative direction. I want you to examine those images, either of yourself or others, and it's as if you took this image and you compare it with a photograph of that person. Are there any distortions there? And then the question is, do these distortions serve you or do they not serve you? Let me give you some examples, just by way of clarifying what I mean. Very often when people feel shame, they actually see themselves internally as misshapen or uglier than they are, or somehow less human in some way. And on the other hand, pride, often people see themselves, taller than they really are, and younger and more dynamic and more good-looking and so on. There was a guy down in Australia. I said, I was offering him this thing of looking inside. He says, he was probably 55, pretty overweight, balding, and he says, in all my images, I am 25, dark-haired and slender. And I said, that must be a bit of a shock when you get up in the morning and look in the bathroom, look in the bathroom mirror, it's probably fine to see yourself internally a little bit better looking than you are. Why not? But if there's significant distortions, sometimes it would be useful to adjust them a little bit. And particularly if there are distortions that end up making you somehow less than human or less than you are. Those in particular. If you make yourself a little bit more grandiose, well, maybe why not?
In two images, I see myself like black, or like a negative.
Okay.
And the rest, like, I feel like I'm, as you said, grand and aware of myself.
Okay. And is there anything you'd want to adjust in terms of that grandness? Or?
No, I want to adjust those blackness.
Okay. Go ahead and do that. Allow those, are they still pictures as well?
Still, yes.
Okay. Allow them to become a movie. It's like that person steps out of the photograph and moves. And see if the color comes with that.
It's myself.
So you see yourself
Self,
in a movie.
But the blackness, I need to change the blackness.
Okay. Imagine you pour water on it, and the water just sort of, like it was made of
washing
ink,
the,
just washing it out, yeah.
That's good.
When you offer these little suggestions, they're just suggestions of possibilities. I call them mini reference experiences. So they're not experiences of having, I don't know, written a whole book or succeeded at the Olympics or something like that. They're just little tiny things that you can take from reality. Oh, yeah, I've seen that. And it kind of tells the brain, this is what I mean, try this. And everybody's seen something like that. Maybe when you were kids, there was some ink drawing and you poured water on it and all the color washed out of it. Or you've all had some experience of that, right? So when I mention that, it kind of gives her brain the idea, oh, yeah, I could do that. Okay.
And this removes some of the guilt feeling that I had. It's not a big deal, but I wish that I have done this or...
Okay. Wish you'd done differently.
Said this or... in the past.
Great. So there's something not quite satisfactory about some of these.
And I'm very sensitive on how I interact with others, with family, with others, and sometimes slips happen.
Of course.
Yeah.
All of us do. And will be the big topic tomorrow, is how we can deal with some of those. So I want to promise you that we'll get back to that.
Yeah, but it feels good so far.
Okay, great. So it's now in color?
Actually, not color, but white. From black, it became white.
How about adding in a few shades of gray?
Yeah, I like it white.
I like it white. Okay. Now, you said something about some of these over here were kind of grand. Did I misunderstand you? Or?
Here is the lion.
The lion, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The lion, the metaphoric lion. Okay. Is there any way you would want to adjust that icon in any way?
Oh, yes. I want to make him more human, so I can step in.
Okay.
And enjoy the time.
That sounds like a wonderful thing to do. Can you take a little minute just to get started on that? What changes would you make to make it more human? Give that lion, keep his ability of strength and power, and yet somehow temper it to make it more human. Will it soften it somehow?
Often it became like more human feature, with a smile, with...
okay.
And it's easy for me to step in. Like an invitation.
Okay. And if you try stepping in right now, what is that like?
It's a great feeling. It's like sharing. Much better than the lion.
Okay.
Though it's the characteristics that are there, but he's more softer, more human, more inviting.
Yeah. Great.
And I like to preserve the qualities and make him more reachable for me.
Great. Now, if you think of the name of this quality that you started with, is your experience of the quality somewhat different now, given all the little changes we've made?
Yes.
You earlier spoke of it being richer somehow, more texture, perhaps?
It is changed.
Yeah. Great. That's all I want to demonstrate now. Do you have any questions?
But how it changed? It was something, it became something else now.
Well, we made lots of little changes. Small adjustments in the individual examples in the database. And it's so easy to do on the level of the database. On the level of the singular quality, the summary representation, it's very hard to do. On the level of these individual things, it's very easy to let a little color leach out of the black image, to let the lion become a little more human. And I just asked if there's any way that you would want to change that. She came up with the softening and this, that, and the other. I didn't do that. I just offering an opportunity to make some little adjustments. And that's really what I'm offering all of you too. Do you have any questions, Anwar? And did you all notice shifts in her face and her? When the lion softened, who else softened?
I softened.
Because this is who you are. And this is how to adjust who you are to become more of who you want to be.
That's true, yeah.
And this is what I'm offering all of you in all of this, not just this little piece here. Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any questions about these? These are listed in your notes. And, of course, next I would like you to experiment with those a little bit. I think I'll just put you to work and not have a break at this point. Do you have any questions on any of these? Perceptual positions, specific data versus metaphoric. Explore that a little bit. Explore changing. And if you have only detailed images, change one of them into a metaphoric image or gather several of them together into a metaphor. It's kind of how we do it. Other people, examining the other people that you have in there representing this quality. Are there any adjustments you'd make there? Major contexts. See if there are any contexts that are kind of missing or underrepresented. And fill some in from your memory. And then content distortions and biases. And those, I leave it to you to decide what serves you best. But remember that one of my things was that your self-concept be accurate. So I'd want to be at least mostly accurate. If you err at all, maybe a little bit on the side of seeing yourself a little better, a little prettier, a little more strong, or whatever it is that you want, because that's where you'll go. And so a little bit of distortion there is not a problem. At least I haven't found it to be a problem. If you're 50, balding, and overweight, and you see yourself as 25, slim, and dark-haired, I think that can be a problem. Oh, it made him a bit pompous and other things that you might expect. I mean, he thought of himself in very different ways than other people did. And there are probably other distortions in there, other inaccuracies in his database. But I know this guy pretty well, and it fit perfectly. I mean, it kind of made sense when I heard it. I go, oh, yeah, okay. Yes.
Does it serve you? Because I think that's the check you use.
Yeah.
Because I find that certain things that I do, I can still feel like I'm 16, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see it as a problem.
Fine. Then I'm going with you.
I know I don't look like I'm 16. But a particular quality is embodied at a particular age.
If there's some kind of distortion in there that allows you to go into situations and do things that you would otherwise not allow yourself to do, and you're happy with the results of that, I got no argument. It's just simply another thing to check. And some people have very different ideas about who they are in there, and then they end up trying stupid things sometimes. And I knew one guy who was probably 65 and thought he could still run a 100-yard dash in 7 seconds flat or whatever it is, and he couldn't. And I think overall you're better off knowing what you're capable of and starting from there in terms of increasing your capability. There's an old joke about a guy who's lost in upstate Vermont. He's driving around these little winding roads, and he's totally lost. He wants to get to New York City. And he stops by the side of the road. There's a farmer there, leaning on his pitchfork. And he stops and he says to the farmer, he says, how do I get to New York City? And the farmer looks at him and he chews on his straw for a while. He says, Mister, if I was you, I wouldn't start from here. And I think you got to start from here. That if you want to become more of whatever, that if you know where you are, you're better off than imagining you're somewhere else. And because if he thinks he's in Wisconsin and he heads for New York City, he's not going to get to New York City. But if he knows he's in upstate New York or Vermont, then he can find his way to New York City. So overall, I go for reality, but I don't mind fantasizing now and then. And remember, these are the things that take you where you want to go, and you become whatever it is you put in there. So again, I'd like you to spend about 15 minutes, and then we'll wrap up a little bit and have an assignment for you this evening as well, which I think you'll find fun, and I hope you do it. If you don't, you'll just miss out, that's all. But that's up to you. So about 15 minutes, get in a new group of 3. Again, just internally do a lot of these things. Anwar has already done a lot, but she can do some more too. And just play with these things. Look at your list, go inside, check it out, and any adjustments you want to make. And then do that for 5-7 minutes, and then another 5 to 7 or so sharing your experiences with each other. And I'll see you in about 15 or maybe 17.